Hello. Since so many of you did not like problem 20 on the geometric series homework, I decided I'm going to record myself doing the problem so that you can go back and pause as you need to. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Mr. R is recording for me. It's going to be on this lovely camera. Well, no, display, whatever, projector. So I'm going to go roll over there and do this. Okay, in number 20, they give us the sum of the first three terms and the sum of the first six terms. S sub 3 then would be equal to 304, and S sub 6 is 1,330, okay? And then from there, we are just going to use our formulas for the sum to replace some things so that we can end up with a system of equations with two variables. So S sub 3 is going to be equal to U sub 1 times the quantity of R sub, to the power of 3 minus 1 all over R minus 1. And then S sub 6 would be U sub 1 times the quantity R to the 6th minus 1 all over R minus 1. And then since we know what S sub 3 is, we can go ahead and replace that right there. And we can do the same thing with our S sub 6. So I'm going to do that here. Is this too dark?
It's pretty dark.
Here. Is that better? Okay. So then that's going to give me 304 equals U sub 1 times R cubed minus 1 all over R minus 1. And then over here, that would give me 1,330 equals U sub 1 times the quantity R to the 6th power minus 1 all over R minus 1. And now we have a system of equations with two variables and two equations. So the easiest way to go about solving this, in my opinion, is to go ahead and solve for one variable on this equation and then solve for that same variable on this equation right here. And I feel that the easiest one to solve for would be U sub 1. So that's what I'm going to do. So over here, to get U sub 1 by itself, first I'm going to multiply both sides by the quantity of R minus 1, giving me 304 times the quantity R minus 1 equals U sub 1 times the quantity R cubed minus 1. And then to get U sub 1 all the way by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by the quantity of R cubed minus 1. And that will give me 304 times the quantity R minus 1 over R cubed minus 1 equal to U sub 1. Oh, that's awfully bright.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if I lean in, is that better? Create a shadow. No. Turn it off. Oh, that's terrible. Ugh. Will you pause it? Okay, and then on this equation over here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to isolate U sub 1, starting by multiplying both sides by the quantity of R minus 1. So when I do that, I end up with 1,330 times R minus 1 in a set of parentheses equals U sub 1 times the quantity R to the 6th minus 1. Okay, and then from there, I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by R to the 6th power minus 1. Oops. Okay, and then once I do that, I get U sub 1 all by itself. So I get 1,330 times the quantity R minus 1 over R to the power of 6 minus 1 equals U sub 1. And now, since u sub 1 is equal to this and u sub 1 is equal to this, that means these two quantities are equal to each other. We're just using the transitive property of equality right here. Okay, so I'm just going to set this guy equal to that guy. 304 times the quantity r minus 1 over r cubed minus 1 equals 1,330 times the quantity r minus 1 all over r to the 6th power minus 1. Now from here, is that a bad glare?
A little bit.
There we go. Okay, from there, since these both have one factor of r minus 1, we're going to go ahead and cancel those out. Okay, and that will leave us with 304 over r cubed minus 1 equals 1,330 over r to the 6th power minus 1. And then we have a proportion, so we are just going to cross multiply. And that will give me 1,330 times the quantity r cubed minus 1 equals 304 times the quantity of r to the 6th power minus 1. And then once you do that, you're going to go ahead and distribute So we're going to do 1,330 times r cubed and times 1. And then over here we get 304 r to the 6th minus 304. And then we're just going to go ahead and we are going to get everything on one side of your equal sign. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract 1,330 r squared and also add 1,330. So that'll give me 0 on the left. And then on the right I get 304 r to the 6th power minus 1,330 r cubed plus 1,026. And then from there, that's where it gets interesting. So in my opinion, the easiest way to approach this crazy problem is to keep in mind that we can't treat this like a quadratic equation yet, but if we go ahead and we decide to let x equal r cubed, then that will actually change into a quadratic equation we can solve. So we would just write 0 equals 304, and if x is equal to r cubed, then that means this would become x squared. And then r cubed would become just a plain old x. And then you have a quadratic function, or equation rather. So that means that you can go ahead and use the quadratic formula. So that would mean x equals 1,330 plus or minus the square root of negative 1,330 squared minus 4 times 304 times 1,026 all over 2 times 304. And then we will put that into our lovely little calculator. And when we do, we will get, oh goodness, just a mess. I'm going to put a lot of this in my calculator at once because I don't want to write all that. Okay, so when I put what's underneath the square root in the calculator, I end up with, oh really? Okay, and then I can simplify this a little bit further. I get 1,330 plus or minus 722 all over 608. Okay, and that'll give me two different answers here. Okay, so that will give me an answer of 3,000, or not 3,000, 3.375 and 1. Okay? And you have to keep in mind that what we really found here was x, and x is equal to r cubed. So really what we found here is that r cubed equals 3.375, or r cubed can equal 1. So if r cubed equals 1, that means that r has to equal 1. And we don't want to use that, because when r equals 1, we end up with the most boring sequence we could ever have. So we're just going to get rid of that. Nope, not using it. And then to get r by itself over here, we're going to cube root both sides. And when we do that, we end up with r equals 1.5. And that is a great number, and we will keep it. And then from there, we have to remember that the whole goal is to find, I believe it's the 7th term. No, the sum of the first 7 terms. And in order to do that, we have to know our u sub 1 as well. So we need to find our u sub 1. So we go way back to where we got u sub 1 by itself right here. And we're going to plug our r value in there. So that would become, so if u sub 1 equals 304 times r minus 1 over r cubed minus 1, then since r is equal to 1.5, this will become 304 times 1.5 minus 1 all over 1.5 cubed minus 1. And then when you put that whole thing in your calculator, pause. U sub 1 then is going to equal 64 after you put this whole thing in your calculator with parentheses where they belong. And then to find S sub 7, you would just plug everything into the formula. So we'll take U sub 1 times R to the 7th minus 1 all over R minus 1, giving us 64 times the quantity 1.5 to the power of 7 minus 1 over 1.5 minus 1. And then when we put that whole thing into our calculator, we will get 2,059. So all that work, and this is our final answer.